Yes, welcome to Burr Cash Flow Investors. Cash Flow Investors, and today is Wednesday. So, as we get started, there are a few issues that have been coming up, and they're related to kind of the economy. They're related to sort of the interest rates, and what do we think is going to happen? Still, if you look at the videos that are being made in terms of the videos that people are making about, oh my God, interest rate, the market's going to crash, market's going to crash. This is every single video that is being made on YouTube. For sure is all about how the market is going to crash and how it's going to be terrible than it was even in 2008. And to me, it makes absolutely no sense. So the whole thought process right now is the Feds know something, and that's why basically they're lowering the interest rates, and the market is about ready to crash. So this is the news everywhere, and they find any single justification. Homeowners can't afford properties, hence the market's going to crash. The builders are cutting prices on houses, the market's going to crash, right? So there's in the commercial real estate, people are in trouble because of the interest rates being high, and because office buildings are not as much in demand as they used to be pre-pandemic, which is what it is, right? So today, a lot of people, even though people have come back to work, not as many as before. Why? Because it's a shift in technology. So you don't need as big a office building as you used to at some point. A lot of people are still working remote, and that's just the way of the world, and it's going to become more so. But people like us are going to need an office. So for certain industries, for certain people, certain businesses, you're going to need an office. For other people, they're not going to be using an office. So, I mean, that's all understandable. But what does that have to do with a crashing market? So let's first address that issue. So in my opinion, and this is just my humble opinion, I do not believe the market is crashing, and I do not believe it is crashing at all for any known reasons as of today. Right. So today, basically, we're recording this at 5:30 on, what is it, the 13th of December. Now, does that mean if something changes, right? There is a whatever is going on in Israel. Supposedly, at this point, it's a little bit better than where things were at one point. But if that suddenly blows up, or if something happens, Ukraine or some other natural disaster, something else happens, we don't know, right? We can't see the future. But based on the conditions that exist right now, in terms of the market as it exists in the United States, based on real estate, the market is not going to crash. Now, does that mean that there may be a 5%, 8% pullback? Absolutely. And I've been saying this over and over and over. So if you look at a market like Florida, where you have a lot of pending inventory available, they raise the interest rates, and they raise it, and they raise it, and they raise it. At some point, the properties just become too expensive for people to be able to qualify for people to be able to buy. So in that market, when you have a slew of properties, so what happened in places like Florida, some places, even parts of Texas, even places where you have more land. What happened was more and more builders went there. They were generally warmer places. They were south of the Mason-Dixon line. They're generally Republican type of places, meaning more conservative places. So they were a lot more open during the pandemic. And guess what? There was a natural migration of people of moving from the north. Excuse me. That migration is going to continue. That is not going to stop. But yet, the droves in which people were going, it's not as many. And some had to come back because that was work-related reasons. So what does that mean? So basically, when that many people were going, even people like us, we started building in Florida. And that doesn't mean that there's a net loss in Florida or in Texas or in Alabama or in Phoenix areas or Vegas areas. There's a net positive in those areas. But the amount of people going there obviously has slowed down. Yet the inventory of properties in those areas has continued to go up because there was a lot of new construction going on. So in those areas, okay, you can't sell the property for $380. You couldn't sell it for $400. Maybe you have to sell it for $350. You have to sell it for $340. You have to sell it for $320, right? That's just how it is. Now, if you just start suddenly saying, oh my God, it's so bad because in certain areas that were overbuilt, you have to basically reduce prices, slash prices, buy interest rates down, do that sort of thing. Is that bad? No, that's not bad. That's called normal. So you realize that the inventory today across the country, if you look at it, there's a less than 2 months supply of properties across the country as a whole. Generally, we have 5 to 6 months worth of inventory. So the inventory a few months back was less than 1 month supply, barely 1.5 month supply in some certain areas. So now it's at 2 months or 2.5 months. Still, compared to the norm, meaning from the last 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, what we had seen in the market before Corona, we never had that low of an inventory. So now today, suddenly all these YouTubers and everybody is crying, oh my God, we're going into recession, watch out, right? And this is complete BS, right? And it's BS because guess what? If there is a 3, 4, 5, 6% slowdown, 8%, 7% slowdown, what's the big deal, right? That's called normal. Yet we haven't experienced normal. That's like saying, poor in America. It's interesting to me whenever people say that kind of nonsense is because it just doesn't make any sense, right? If the poor people here are richer than anywhere else in the world, right? You're rich if you're poor in America, kind of thing. And that's where I think we've lost all common sense, because you buy a property last year, you pay top dollar for the property, 500. This year, if you have to sell it, so what? If you take a beating for 50,000 bucks, I'm not saying so what that it doesn't hurt your pocket. It hurts your pocket. But guess what? What has happened is that you were overpaying for the property, and you knew you were overpaying for the property, but guess you're not going to live in a rental property, and you paid what you paid for the property. It is what it is. That's called basic economics 101. I mean, people were buying properties, brand new cars, 30, 40, 50,000. If you're buying an expensive car and it was in high demand, you're paying 30, 40, $50,000, $60,000 premium on a car. Now, guess what? They have a parking lot full of these suckers sitting. That's just how it is. It's called simple supply and demand. But if you look at the supply and demand around the United States today, you look at the states across the board, guess what? Still the inventory is short, right? So why are they bringing the interest rates down? I thought they were raising the interest rates because they wanted to slow down the economy. Well, they wanted to curb inflation. And the interest rates were going up because they just wanted to curb inflation. And we can make it as complicated and as complex as possible. But guess what? It boils down to few simple things. And it boils down to supply versus the demand. If the demand is high and the supply is down, prices are going to go up. If the demand is low and the supply is more, the prices are going to go, if the demand is high, supply is down, the price is going to go up. And if the opposite, which is there's a lot of supply and there's low demand, prices are going to come down. It's that simple. Interest rates have nothing to do with it. Why? Because they tried raising the interest rates. Still, if you take a market like Chicago, you take a lot of the markets around the country, there is just absolutely no supply of homes relative to the people that are willing to buy them. Now, has it ticked down a little bit? Yes, because if you look at the year 2021, 2022, that, in those years, we had close to about 6 million some homes sold in the United States. Yet, if you look at this year, there are about 4 million some homes sold. So in 2022, there were more homes sold coming out of Corona, that period, than ever. Why? Because they lowered the interest rates. They made it very attractive for everybody to be able to buy a bigger house. People were staying at home and they're like, oh my God, honey, we need a bigger house. It's that simple, right? So this whole thing about, oh my God, the market is crashing. Guys, the numbers are just not there. At least they're not there right now, because guess what they've done? Every single time they've kicked the can down the road. Anybody who got in trouble during Corona, they gave them forbearances, they gave them more money. They said, you can stay in the house, you don't have to make payments, like FHA, right? There's a lot of people that have FHA loans and they cannot afford to pay. During Corona, it made sense. We had a worldwide catastrophe, worldwide event, but yet still what did they do? They've kept Corona has been over. It's been over for most people for a long time, but they have kept that going, and it's purely political. That has nothing to do with economics. It's purely political because they're like, oh, we can't have anybody losing a home. Guess what happened? People, if they were making a $1,400, $1,500, $1,800 payment, they're not used to making that payment anymore. Now most Americans, right, as a society, we're fat, dumb, and happy. That's just how we are. And so what do? Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to take my payment, put it aside, I'm not going to spend it, I have a little bit of a rain check for some months or a couple of years because of Corona, and then I'm going to go back to resuming making the payments. Guess what the average American did? They had a ball. They bought cars. They had all kinds of entertainment, this, that, whatever they did. And then now, guess what they're doing? They're still postponing that. So my point being is this, that at the end of the day, as long as the inventory of homes available is low and the demand is high, the prices are going to stay up in all of those places, Chicago being one of them, right? Chicago market still is sky high. Are there some price adjustments? Yes, there are some price adjustments. Why? Because the interest rates have gone up. So is that normal? Of course that is normal. That makes sense. There's nothing to panic about that. There's nothing, oh my God, it's the end of the world. I mean, this is what they do, right? This is what they do. I mean, if you think about like 9/11, what happened after 9/11, we were all concerned. It was a world shattering event for if you lived in the United States. But guess what? Any person of a certain heritage now suddenly is like, oh my God, we're supposed to be afraid. No, that's not the case, right? The news media will always make you scared and always make you overreact to it. Us as investors, if the market comes down a little bit for us, it's actually very, very good because retail price, if it comes down by say 7%, guess what happens in the wholesale market? The wholesale market is going to come down 25 to 30%. So it's a blessing. You should pray for a nice, hard recession. And now some people will say, Andrew, but guess what? Some of my prices are going to come down. Absolutely. Some of your property prices will come down. Maybe if you're doing a flip in the middle of it, you may not make as much money, but guess what it does? It opens up a tremendous amount of opportunity for you and I to be able to buy a lot more properties. So this is something important to understand. Like we have inventory of properties in Florida. Now, the duplexes in Florida that we have, that we've built, they're selling. But yet the single families, they're not selling at as high a pace as they were a year and a half ago. It's simple, right? Because it's supply and demand. Now, am I going to go, oh my God, the world is caving in? No, there's no conspiracy. The world is not caving in. Just simply happened that now we're past the amount of people that were moving in the numbers that were moving to Florida. So hence today, there is a little bit of a slowdown and a lot of builders have put a lot of their properties on the market. So even our rentals in the Florida market, right, they're taking longer to rent. Some of them are sitting vacant. Now, if I put myself in a financial bind where I can't afford to carry the property, right? That's not a catastrophe for the market. That is my catastrophe, meaning I was foolish if I did that. Fortunately, I haven't done that, but I'm just saying that some people obviously will go all in. It's like when people invest in cryptocurrency, right? They don't understand anything about it. Everybody else is buying. It's going straight up. Boom. I'm going to take, if like say somebody like me, if I put say 10,000 in, 100,000 in, or 200,000 in, if I lose it, am I going to like it? No, of course, nobody likes losing money. But if tomorrow I lost $200,000, right? Today, is it really going to change my lifestyle? Is it going to make any difference? No, I'm not going to like it. I'm like, oh, that was stupid. But for some people, if that's their life savings, or they put a home equity loan on the property, and they go on this, and they put themselves in a financial dire straits, they take 200,000 and put it in cryptocurrency. And guess what? If it comes down 5, 10, 12%, and they are forced to sell it because they can't meet other expenses, that would become a catastrophe for them. If I did that, now I don't invest in cryptocurrency because I don't understand anything about it. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to become multi-bajillionaires, but I don't understand it. Hence, I stay out of it. But if I took a risk of, say, 20,000 or 200,000 or even $1 million, right? Is that going to have a devastating effect on my life? No, it won't today. But yet, maybe even 2 million may not. But what if it was 20 million, right? See, there is a point that everybody will come to where if you go do crazy things with money, it will cause you financial distress. And if you do even more risky things, it may be very, very bad for your financial health, may cause you to go bankrupt. What my point about all of this is that there is nothing to panic about. There's nothing to worry about if you're a regular homeowner. And unless you're planning on selling a home, whether it's in Florida or whether wherever it is, guess what? Things going up and things coming down, that is a natural that is a natural course of a healthy economy. So this whole thing about, oh my God, how everything's over, right, is ridiculous. And most of this nonsense, most of it is generated by who? Real estate agents, right? This is a lot of real estate agents are making some wonderful videos today on YouTube, but they all are in this thing, oh my God, it's over, it's over, it's over. Why? Because it gets you and I. Even I like to click on it to see what are these buffoons talking about. Now, if you're in Florida and you only sell properties in Florida, let's say, in certain parts of county, guess what? The market is slow. Right? People are not buying as many properties as they were for the last 3-4 years, right? The market was out of control. But if you're in Chicago, real estate agents don't have a property to sell. I was just looking at some comps in Wheaton, for example. The property I bought for $292. And we were looking at it because now the property is almost complete and it's a pretty decent rehab. So I'm not going to say it's like an amazing rehab by any means. I don't do over the top rehabs. And we were comping it. And I was telling Harry, I'm like, dude, stick the property on the market for like $560, $570. When I had bought the property, I was thinking about maybe $480, $490. And in Mastery, we were debating, Andrew, is it possible to get $510, $515? Now I'm like, hey, who cares? Now, it's a wrong time of the year to sell a stupid property, right? Right now, we're in the middle of December. I mean, you have to be crazy to put a property on the market in December. But guess what? There is no inventory. There is not a single property for sale. I'll give you an example of rentals. Same exact thing. We were just looking at a property. I have a property that's being ready on Fletcher in Elmwood Park. I paid $200,000 for the bungalow. I put about $50, $55, maybe $60,000 because we did a little bit of a bump out. And then it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath bungalow. And it's a beautiful property, stunningly beautifully done. And for that property, I'm trying to decide, okay, what do I do? I can't do a short-term rental, a short-term Airbnb over there. I can do a midterm, and I can do, obviously, a long-term rental. And when I looked at the numbers, in Elmwood Park for that type of property, I believe I can get pretty close to $4,000, if not $4,100 or so for that type of a property. There is one property that is available as a rental in the MLS, in all of Elmwood Park. It is unbelievable what is going on in terms of the listings and what the inventory is. There is no inventory on the market. And that is the reason why that these prices are not going to go anywhere. Are we going to see some pain where there's a lot of overbuilding? Absolutely, we're going to see some pain because properties have been overbuilt. We see that in Florida going on, right? We're feeling that pain in Florida. That's just what it is. But to say, oh my God, it's the end of the world, it is ridiculous, right? It is ridiculous that, and these gurus and these people on YouTube, every week, Peter Schiffer, I don't know what all these names are, right? They've never been wrong. They predicted all the last crashes. And for the last 2-3 years, every day they predict a crash. No, it's going to be tomorrow. We're positive. Guess what? It hasn't crashed. It hasn't crashed. Why? Because there is a huge demand. So I wanted to address that because that is something that keeps coming up every time I open YouTube. I see these videos, and obviously I'm interested in real estate. So I'm always curious on people's point of view as it relates to real estate. So it's kind of interesting. So I just thought I would address it right off the bat. So the next question was, I have a property under contract to purchase, and it's my first investment property. How do I know how much should I be doing an update in terms of a rental property or leave it as is? It is totally livable as it is now. So when you're thinking about a rental property, guys, think about safety of the property, right? Safe and secure is all you need for a rental, meaning the property needs to be clean, right? Because then you'll attract better quality people. And safe, meaning you want to make sure that you have carbon monoxide detectors, you have smoke detectors, that the windows basically go up and down properly, you have escape windows, whatever meets the code as per code, because you probably don't want to have a property that is unsafe. But guess what? Besides that, if the cabinets are a little bit older, that's okay. as long as they are not in bad condition, and you could, a lot of times, we will leave the cabinets as is, paint the cabinets, and we will take the countertop out and just put a granite, or we'll put a quartz countertop, because it is not that expensive over changing a countertop. So those types of things. So generally in a rental property, you don't need to do an over-the-top rehab at all whatsoever, period. You want to do a minimum thing. Now, I'm not saying do shoddy work. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm saying is that you don't have to do a lot of work, because it's just simply not required. The renter doesn't expect that. Now, if you're going to do the work, that's different, right? Like the property in Elmwood Park that I have, I intended from the day I got it, because it was a grandmother's house. She had lived in there 60, 70 years. She passed away and the family sold the property. So I had to do a gut job over there. Not a gut job, but I had to do a lot of work, because the HVAC was shot, everything was shot, and it still had green carpet and, kind of weird looking countertops from the 60s and 70s. So I had to redo the whole thing. While I was at it, I went ahead and made there was no bathroom upstairs, so it was a 3-bedroom house with 1 bath. So we made it a 4-2, because that increases the value. Today, that property will rent for somewhere around $4,000, right? So in those cases, it makes sense. But in a lot of cases, I would not do an update. And the way I would look at it is this. I would go into the multiple listing service, or have your agent, if you don't have access to multiple listing service, have them go in and show you all the properties that have been rented in the area. What do the pictures look like inside, right? And basically do that or a little bit less. You don't have to over improve a property, especially today, right? Especially if you're going to rent the property between end of February, March, April, May, June, July. Right? Those are the months to rent a property. Generally, winter months, you're going to get poorer quality tenants, because this is different. And this is important to understand, that the demand for rental properties, you may get people right now, but guess what's going to happen? The quality of the people generally, this is a general rule of thumb, is not good after July. So after July, August, September, October, now somebody's going to challenge me, but Andrew, I rented 2 properties and end of July or in October. I'm not saying you can't rent it, but if you understand the volume of the business, you should be ending your leases and starting your leases ideally end of February, March, April, May, June, and into July. And if you go much past in July, the demand dies. People that are better quality tenants generally, unless they're forced to move, they're generally not going to want to move. That's just kind of how the market is. So if you're doing a rental, think about safety and cleanliness, and those are the 2 things you should focus on. And if you can do a little bit of updating, that's great, right? Like especially with the countertops, the kitchen countertops, that seems to be a big plus. Appliances don't have to be new. Now, I tend to buy always brand new appliances. We don't buy used appliances. We don't buy dings and bats, which is like, dinged up appliances, because for the volume of business we do, it just is not worth the headache of buying return items and that kind of stuff. But at one time when I was brand new, that was something I tried, and I realized it just wasn't worth it to try to save 50 or $100. So something to pay attention to. But with a rental property, you don't have to do an over-the-top rehab. Now, on the other side of it, if you look at an Airbnb, on an Airbnb, we're doing a lot more rehab to those properties. Do you have to do it? No. But if you want your product to stand out a little bit, you got to go a little bit over and above, because it just, in an Airbnb, you're in a customer service business, and immediately it can affect your reviews and all that sort of thing. So with a regular rental property, this is not an issue, and especially when it's a strong market. How do you decide what areas to invest in, and do you like to invest in other cities? So I don't invest in other cities besides Chicago. And then obviously we have an office in Florida. Todd from the office is there in Florida. So we all made a decision about 2.5 years ago to go into the Florida market. But then we have a foot presence there. Mastery has a footprint over there, and there's literally hundreds of properties that we built from Mastery over there. So That's the only reason. But I personally do not invest outside of Chicago. Not that it means that if you do invest, nothing wrong with it. If you're buying property passively, say, be it in Indiana or Tennessee or Fort Wayne or different places, good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason I don't do it is because I can't get the kind of returns I get in Chicago. And I'm talking about Chicago suburbs is where I tend to have 99.9% of my investments, even though we have 10, 12 houses, 15 houses now in Florida. But that's not a big portfolio for someone like me, right? So, and the reason I don't do it is because I want to pick the properties that I buy, and I want them to be operated and run with the numbers that I want them run. So we do the management in the office, and Miss Sandra handles that. That's the reason I don't do it, because I can get an exceptionally high rate of return in Chicago. Now, if I could invest like this in some other city where there was huge amount of appreciation, huge amount of cash flow, please let me know. I would love to look into it. We did look at the Houston market, because obviously it's a great market. We looked at the Dallas market. Obviously, that's a great market, huge appreciating market. The problem is I never felt I would have enough control, so I haven't done it. There are other investors that do it, but I feel you lose control. That's just my personal opinion. But again, I mean, if you look at a lot of the Carolinas, a lot of the places, a lot of people bought properties in Tennessee, a lot of places people went and bought properties. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not my style of investing. Now, if I lived in California and you live in California and you have to invest out of state because you can't really get a rate of return in terms of cash on cash numbers in California, that's understandable. And a lot of people from the West Coast, be it in Seattle, be it in California, they tend to do that. But because we get a super high cash on cash return. I mean, in the Chicago market, and I'm talking suburb market, good B and A and B markets, even C markets, you get every single time 25, 30% cash on cash return. I wouldn't even get out of bed for that amount of money, right? It's so because our numbers are much, much, much higher than that in terms of rates of return on good quality properties. And I've gotten spoiled. Right? Really, that's the only word I can use. Because the numbers have been so good here in Chicago, I've just gotten spoiled. And I don't buy cheap properties in cheap suburbs with, crappy tenants. That's just not what I do. I've never done that. I never believe in it. So that's not what I do. But that's the reason I don't invest out of the area, and I don't want to buy turnkey properties. And the reason I don't buy turnkey properties is all the equity has been stripped out of it. There's no equity left in the property, and I do not like to buy a property. I absolutely will not buy a property if there's not a lot of equity in it. To me, ideal amount of equity is 25%. Right. So if I buy a property for, say, I'll give you guys a perfect example. The Elmwood Park property I bought for $200. I put about $50,000-$60,000 into it. The back end appraisal on it, after carrying cost, after everything, right? In the property, the back end appraisal is $470,000. I'm in the deal, including carrying costs, refinance, all the thing. And even if I add another $20,000 on top of it, be in the property for $300. I like properties with a lot of equity, and I want a lot of cash flow. Now, I'm spoiled, and I'm not willing, and I'm not afraid of doing the work to find those types of properties. But if you look at my portfolio, these are all properties, either I bought them in the MLS, either I bought them at auction, or I bought them on online auctions, or I bought them from off market, meaning through our mailings and that sort of thing. Every single property, you can trace it, you can source every single property that I own. And every single property, when I tell you, every single property that I own, and there are hundreds of them, they will have over about 22% equity 99.99999% of times. That's just how I like to buy. Otherwise, I'm going to pass it, or I'm just going to flip the property or wholesale the property. So hopefully that makes sense. What is your favorite thing about being a real estate investor? Guys, listen, the best thing I like about real estate is it's not based on who you are, where you come from, what your background is, and how intelligent you are. It has nothing to do with it. To me, real estate is the best equalizer, meaning it doesn't matter where you came from, where you started. All it matters is where you're going to go. It gives you an equal opportunity to invest. Doesn't matter your ethnicity, your race, your anything. It makes no difference because real estate doesn't care. A deal doesn't care. Now, some people say, but Andrew, it depends, because if you have more money, you have more opportunity. It's true, right? You can take advantage of more opportunities if you had money. But the thing is this, the great part is opportunity that is presented is there. How much you can execute, of course, is going to depend on how much money you have or how much money you can raise. And the good part about real estate is this, that investing in real estate is a learned skill set. It's not a skill set you're born with. So anybody can learn the skill set. Is it going to take time? Is it going to be frustrating? Absolutely. Anything worthwhile in life is going to be frustrating. So that's just called normal growth. So to me, I love that real estate is the greatest equalizer, and that if you take care of real estate, by what I mean by take care is that if you buy the right type of properties, you do the right due diligence, you do the right homework for the first 5 years, real estate will take care of you for the rest of your life. If you dedicate the time, if you're willing to put the work in, right? If you're willing to do the aggravation, if you're willing to go through the headache, because nobody, unless your dad was just rich and you just got handed out money, right? I mean, that's a different situation. But if that's not the case, if you do anything, if you're a musician, if you're a great, I mean, if you're a great poker player, or if you're a great chess player, or if you're a great at basketball or anything, to be good at anything and to succeed at anything in life, it takes work. If you make a lot of YouTube videos, you make a lot of money at it. Guess what? It's going to take work. It's going to take frustration. It's just the same. The beauty of real estate is it provides you leverage, and you can scale, and an average person starting out from zero can become a millionaire. It gives you the opportunity. Will you become a millionaire or not? That's up to you, right? A part of it is going to be luck. But what is luck? It's opportunity meeting preparedness. That's what luck is. That opportunity, when it meets preparedness, guess what happens? You become lucky. And guys, it's simple, that there are two types of people. One person says, oh my God, it didn't work for me. The second person says, I have no other option. Like for somebody like me, I had no other option. I was very blessed that I had two parents that were exceptionally bright. That was a huge blessing because I didn't do anything to earn it. They were bright because both of them had good college educations. They were both surgeons. I was not as bright in terms of schoolwork as my sister. My sister always got A's. I always got B's and C's, kind of, and that was just how it was. But guess what? My brain worked in some other direction, and my parents set a bar which was rather high. And so my attitude always was that I just cannot fail, right? That's not acceptable. I'm not going to go home. And I failed. I mean, if you look at my 20s, I had a really, really, really rough start when I started in real estate, because I got in, I was 19 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. Till about 22, 23, I was barely surviving, right? And then some of you guys know the whole gas station fiasco. And even then it took time. I mean, today, to get to this stage, this is 2023, end of 2023. I started investing in 2008, 2009, 2010, till end of 2010. I had done a bunch of flips, but had nothing to show for it. Then it took 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. By the time I got to 2015, I actually had some properties to show for it, right? So guys, guess what? Compared to today, if I look at people in mastery, that was a very slow start. But guess what? I had no other options. I absolutely was not going to let myself basically fail. And there are things since then I've done. We opened the cigar store, right? We haven't done well with that particular business. Still, we tried to sell that business and somebody's trying to buy it for the last 4 or 5 years. But guess what? Besides the real estate part of it, on the real estate side of it, on the building, we're going to make money. On the business side of it, Rahul and I are going to probably lose about $300,000, right? It's just how it is. If I look at the Florida venture, now are the properties worth more than what we built them for? Absolutely. But In the meantime, guess what happened? The interest rate went up, right? It's 3 points higher than where we had thought it was going to be, even though we had accounted for, at the time when we went there, the rates were at 5% for commercial loan, 5.5. So we accounted for 6.5. Today, they're 8.5. Guess what? The demand is lower. So did that make a difference in our cash flow numbers? Absolutely. But guess what happened? In Illinois, the amount of profitability went up this much. In Florida, rather than the profitability here, the profitability is here. But in Illinois, the amount of profitability went through the roof. So these things are going to happen. And even though in Florida, I don't want to sell any of those houses, because why? Because I know if I sell them, I'm going to regret them. Sometimes things take time. I wish I could say that for me or for you, every single thing is going to work out. It's not. And if it's not something that you're prepared for, that not everything is going to go perfectly, you might as well just get a job and keep it. If you lose that, get a better one, work hard, and then save whatever you can. Because otherwise, there is no such thing as perfectly everything working out. So don't know what else to say. What are the goals for 2024? So 2024, for me, the goals are fairly simple. And that is that I'm trying to get to $250,000 a month in net cash flow. That's my goal. I'm not going to get there in 2024. I'm well aware of that. 2023, my goal was 50 Airbnbs. I missed that goal by almost half. Right? I mean, I had just made this number up out of thin air, and I missed that number. So I intend to complete that in 2024, and I intend to keep buying more properties. And with the events, with the seminars, with all that stuff we do, the goal is to go national. That's the next part of it, that we're going to do it. That's something that I have put it off from doing it because we have such a large presence. We're very blessed in Chicago. I don't have to travel anywhere. And it's become not only a business that is self-sustaining, but it's become over time a profitable business. And it's kind of had a huge momentum because of how large Mastery is today. But yet, I feel that we have a ton of potential. So that is something we're going to do, is on that business, we're going to go national, because I want to see not just my growth. I want to see everybody that works with us is a part of the team, that as we grow, it gives everybody more opportunities, be it Pablo, be it Gina, be it everybody that is a part of the team. Everybody gets a chance to wet their beak and to be able to contribute back to the millions of investors around the country. So that's going to be something fun. The last question was, if I only have $20,000 to invest, how would you advise me to start my journey? If you only have $20,000 to invest, my suggestion would be is take the $20,000, put it aside. Show up at every single meeting that we do. And I mean it sincerely. Don't spend a dime, please, for God's sake, right? You don't have to spend any money. All the meetings that we do are 100% free. What you do is when you show up at these meetings, talk to all the investors that are here, especially people from Mastery, right? Come up, say hello to me, and then get them to give you whatever area you live in, whatever area of town you live in, right? Identify people who are investing within a 35 to 40-minute radius, get their addresses, look at the projects that they're currently doing, and when you go to their projects, look up every single flip or every single wholesale that was done. Flips are easy to identify because they have 2 sales within the same year. So you can identify those properties. And then I would look at, what did somebody buy the property for? What did it sell for? What did they buy for? What did they sell for? Right? What you're looking for is the gross margins. The way I started doing flips was I didn't know anything. I mean, I did not even own a screwdriver. I still don't, right? I don't believe in buying a screwdriver, and I don't believe in buying a hammer, because for that, I hire out. That's just what it is, because that's not the function of real estate that pays the most. Hence, I don't do it, right? But my belief was this. If I know, see, there are 2 types of people in real estate. People who understand the business of real estate, and then people who take pride in doing construction. If you do take pride in doing construction, nothing wrong with it. You probably will do beautiful projects. But guess what? That is not what makes money. Construction is a necessary evil to make profits, right? But what you have to understand is the business of real estate. The business of real estate has to do with, can you learn how to find a great deal? The business of real estate has to do with, do you understand financing? That is the business of real estate. Construction is a necessary evil that you have to do. There are certain parts of business, like I cannot stand doing construction, right? It's a mundane business. It's just the same thing over and over and over. But guess what? That is what helps us create the wild margins or create the types of cash flow that we do. So if you have less money, do not go spend the money. Do some leg work before. So what I would do is, let's just say hypothetically, let's say you live in Hillside, for example, right? You should know, what are the last 50 sales that happened in Hillside that were good flips? What are the last 50 sales that happened in Bellwood? What are the last 50 sales that happened in Westchester? If you can't knock them off the top of your tongue, guess what happens? You just don't understand the inventory. And if you think you're going to become a successful flipper, you're going to become successful real estate, you're kidding, my friend. Because the point is, if you don't even understand the product that you're going to engage in. See, real estate is actually simple. The more research that you do, and the more you know the inventory, now you will know, hey, this property fixed up, what will this sell for? Now I can just back into the numbers. Is I know this property is going to sell for 400. Now I know, okay, if it'll sell for 400, I need to buy it at 70% of that cost minus rehab. If you don't know the back end number on it, then guess what's going to happen? It really doesn't matter how beautiful the rehab you do. If you overpay for the property, in time, you may get away with 1 or 2 or 3. But guess what? In time, you will never become a successful real estate investor. The secret to real estate is understanding the inventory of properties that are available, understanding what you should be paying for a property. That is the key. Having said that, we went a bit too long today, so we're going to end it for today. We will talk to you on Friday. Super excited, guys. Please help us grow the community. Please refer us to your friends, family, share, show your love, because that's how we all get to grow. Thanks a bunch, and we'll talk to you on Friday.